Welcome back to Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. Hey guys, today we have a pretty dense topic, and it is about spirituality and neurodivergence and trauma survivors, because spirituality is going to differ for you in the way you need to approach it, particularly if you come under the umbrella of neurodivergence, which a lot of people do. 20% of the population does. It encompasses things like OCD, attention deficit disorder, autism spectrum disorder. There are a couple of other ones, dyslexia. There is another one that has to do with numbers that is very much like dyslexia but involves numbers. It has to do also with simply being very sensitive to the world around you. The reality of the spectrum disorders and the neurodivergence that we are seeing become more and more prevalent in society is that it has always existed. You know, they're asking what causes it. It has always existed. My father was born in 1929. He was older when I was born. And there is absolutely no question based on absolutely every behavior that he ever displayed that he had autism and ADHD, which is a very common combination for people who are on the spectrum disorder, the autism spectrum disorder, which comes at different levels of functionality. So the thing that we need to discuss is what that has to do with spirituality and how it can help with many of the trauma-related disorders and things that we end up needing to heal, and then with neurodivergence. But that the way that the spirituality is approached in the greater world for people who are neurotypical will not work for people who are neurodivergent. So I'm going to be discussing the very specific differences. Now, I've done 2 years worth of work that really does point people who have trauma, who have neurodivergence, who have something deep that they need to heal, which includes a background in abuse. I've done 2 years of episodes talking about what spirit attachments will feel like, which is part of people with OCD are in the neurodivergent family, and they struggle with letting things go. People with autism struggle with letting things go. In the spiritual world, that is called an attachment. In the 3D, it really is fixation. It can be limerence if it's feelings for another person. If your brain functions differently, embrace it. It's labeled a disability, but what it really is a different ability. And that when you're kind to it, when you take care of it, which is what spirituality teaches you how to do, then you feel much better, you function much better, you get accomplished the things that you want to have. You are able to have the relationships that you are hoping to have, both with yourself and with others. But the problem becomes that the entry point for neurodivergent people and for trauma survivors in spirituality and in connecting to your highest self and your divine purpose is different. You come in through a different method and through a different path. It doesn't mean it's lesser, it's just different. Start thinking of these things as a different ability rather than a disability. And the reason becomes is that people resist the evidence of what might be going on with them if it's been labeled negatively. One of the things that we would do best to change in our world is if we stopped labeling things in such a black and white manner and saying this is good, that is bad. Black and white thinking also goes along with many of the spectrum of neurodivergence disorders, which really are, it's order for you. It's order for you, it's just your brain works differently. So we're getting to my housekeeping, because if I keep going, I'll just forget about it. If you need to book me for a tarot card reading, a life coaching session, to be able to discuss like what's my path towards spirituality, you can do so exclusively at therisingmoon.com. I also have a Patreon where we cover through tarot, because that's one of my doorways. Through tarot, we cover the things that you might be facing, the ways to connect, how manifestation and the law of attraction will work for you, because it differs as well. If you are not neurotypical, then your method and your means needs to fit your brain, not the 80% of the population that is deemed neurotypical. But you have, if you're standing in a room with 10 people, one other person is very likely statistically to be neurodivergent. You're not alone, and you're not that odd. But you need a different approach, and that's what we're talking about today. And you can talk to me about it if you book me at therisingmoon.com. Everybody has to market their services sometimes, and I have to too. You can join my Patreon, which is linked in the description box and the notes down below. If you're watching me on YouTube, my YouTube channel is Tarot at the Rising Moon. That's where the video versions of this particular podcast go up. Let's get back into this. So the first thing that people tell us in the neurotypical community about spirituality is that you have to live in the moment. You need to be mindful and you need to let things go. All of those things have significant and extra challenges when you have a neurodivergent brain. And the problem is that a lot of our tech is inducing a form of attention deficit disorder. It's why things are being developed for second screen audiences where you don't have to be able to follow along directly. They're shattering your focus. They're shattering your focus and they're inducing ADHD in a lot of people. And it's because it's easier to tell people what to do when they're not very focused. It's easier to implant ideas in them when they're in this shattered and not very questioning receiving mode. Our receiving mode has been messed with by power structures. And I'm always talking about power structures, but if you've listened to me for any length of time, I'm not a conspiracy theorist on any level. I believe in science-based things. I believe in peer-backed research. It is, one of the funnier and more ironic things in my life that I ended up doing something that has to do with spirituality, because even though I've practiced magic and been able to read tarot for a long time, I am a really grounded person, and that is one of the ways that your neurodivergence will make your spirituality differ, is you have to be comfortable with marrying it to a 3D perspective in a way that the greater spirituality community does not encourage. It encourages you to be detached, to view all beings with unconditional love, which is important. It is important, but neurodivergent people have they can have difficulty ascertaining who it's safe to trust because they can have difficulty reading emotional tone. Now, I don't have difficulty reading emotional tone, and in fact, I have very well developed social skills. But one of the things that my little spirituality jaunt after getting divorced led me on was the discovery that I am, in fact, neurodivergent, and that there are genetic components to neurodivergence. And that if we start with resisting something because it's got a label we don't like with it, then we're already barring our door to healing. So first of all, understand that denial is a protective construct until it's not. Things will come to you. If you hear things over and over again, it's the universe trying to communicate with you. And that's one of the first things you look for in spirituality. But your connection point has to be different because your ability to connect is different than neurotypical people. You need to do something in a very literal and 3D based manner. Your path towards spirituality starts in your earth element, in your ability to take everything into the 3D. If they talk about grounding, you're literally watching videos of trees or going outside to ground. If they're talking about aligning, maybe you're turning in 4 different directions and breathing in and out. You're going to do things in a very literal manner to establish your connection because your brain needs that pathway. Your neuroscience is quite simply different, and you have to carve out a slightly different path towards spirituality. If you think you can't meditate, you can. It's just that you need to have different expectations or expect different results, because expectation breeds disappointment and it can be very damaging. But the idea that you can connect is one of the expectations that we're talking about. So we're going to shelve the idea that the word expectation is negative in this context and say have a different expectation from what meditation is for you. First of all, if you are in the neurodivergent categories, which unfortunately is beginning to involve everybody because of the screen addiction that fractures focus and induces ADHD in so many people, that's going to encompass a lot of people, is that you need to understand your approach to meditating is going to have to be some counts, a little bit helps, and that it will increase to the level that you're supposed to, but you are not supposed to be seeking out long meditation periods. One of the things that comes along with neurodivergence is anxiety disorders and major depressive disorder. And the reason that it does is that it is so hard for people with particularly autism spectrum disorder to be able to navigate the world without incurring a lot of trauma and damage, and that's where the trauma people come in as well. Trauma is not currently, PTSD, CPTSD is not currently identified as as a spectrum disorder or a neurodivergent disorder, because it can be resolved through treatment. there are ways that you can recover. And that's the same thing with the induced ADHD. Once you hone your focus again, you may go back into a neurotypical category and be able to connect for a half an hour at a time. But neurodivergent people start out with, I'm not trying to sit down and meditate forever and ever. I'm learning to hone my focus and still my mind. And one of the first things that we're told in spirituality is you learn to observe your thoughts and let them drift by. This is not how it is done for people with neurodivergence. People with neurodivergence need to recognize their feeling first and not pursue the thought. So rather than let it, because it triggers OCD, people particularly with autism, but almost with all of the neurodivergent behaviors, struggle with letting things go. It is not that you're weak. It is not that you're victim-y, particularly if you're stuck in the why of it all. When it comes to the things that can happen to people, particularly to you, that is part of a normal stage of recovery, but you may be struggling with letting it go and encountering judgment for not being able to let it go because you have a neurodivergent brain, and you literally will have to take a very conditioned response towards letting it go. I've outlined so much of this in the years past, but really it starts with you have to have a method where you do not expect a mental connection. You are going through physical behaviors to try and start clearing your mental space. You start recognizing the fact that your emotions are not your intuition. They never ever are. A lot of people with neurodivergence are actually very, very gifted because they get an extrasensory perception of other people's thoughts, and they become hypervigilant because of the rejection of the reception of who they are. It's complicated and it's still a developing field. So I'm not going to be defining a lot of things. And if you noticed, I haven't shared what my particular neurodivergent diagnosis with. And I've really struggled with should I just say it, what it is? It's I've decided not to, because I'm not going to participate in labeling people and limiting them by labeling them. It's just, if you know something about yourself, you are informed about what your best path is. And that's the way you want to view. If you believe that you have induced ADHD, or if you believe or have been diagnosed with any of the neurodivergence or spectrum disorders, then all it means for you in spirituality is you have to take a more literal approach to things. Now, I did a podcast on how do you meditate with anxiety, and the first thing is you develop this training method. You can program your brain. Since you struggle with letting things go, what you do is you turn your weaknesses into your strengths. If you struggle with letting things go, you are able to pre-program your responses to things like, I'm setting up this period of behaviors where it's grounding, maybe it's aligning, maybe it's a form of breathing, maybe it's I have people mentally counting things off. One of the ways that I help people break OCD, anxiety in the middle of the night, is I have them start singing their favorite song in their head. And eventually that transitions to being able to choose what you're going to think about. When you wake up in the middle of the night, you reach for one of your other mental triggers that is more positive, and over time, once you take the fangs out of your anxiety beast, you're able to determine, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you're going to choose the stillness that you have been programming into you through the 3D methods that you are taking. The very literal grounding, the counting of breaths in cycles where you see your chakra points lit up around it. You're going to need a more mentally engaged method for achieving your connection to spirituality. Because belief and feeling a connection to a higher power is the easiest way to unlock your ability to love and accept yourself, because you will find the best part of yourselves, the patient part, the kind part, the part of you that is kind to yourself and others, and accepting of yourself and others awaits in spirituality. And it doesn't matter which belief system you're approaching it through. Your beliefs are right for you. I'm always talking about how none of these narratives are literal, because the literal truth is beyond our current comprehension. And people who are reaching for religion in particular, religion gave power to people within a societal structure. And then it gave power to people within relationships, and mostly it gives power to men. But the fact of the matter is that, particularly in the case of Christianity, hey, studying history is always very interesting. The current form of Christianity is not the only form of Christianity that ever existed. The Crusades did not just kill people who believed something different, it killed the other people who were practicing Christianity differently. So the form of Christianity that has been promoted was brought to them through conflict and destruction and death. And so it's a little bit corrupted, and it has an end goal and it has an agenda. If you connect to your spirituality, which is the same root element of faith, it's just belief that there is something beyond this that can help you through all of your circumstances. And will it make your life perfect? We're not meant to have perfect lives. We need some conflict to test our skills. If you're here to have a very balanced experience, understand that your view of the world and your connection to the divine is singular and individual. Stop worrying about what's happening to absolutely everybody else. Know that do the best that you can in your current situation to help those that you can, because that is what is asked of us in a spiritual journey. But as I sit here in Southern California today, there are wars throughout the world. There are multiple famines happening. There are multiple genocides. There are multiple, how can there be a loving divine presence if that's going on? And the truth of the matter is that we did that. We did it. It's on us. If we don't fix it, it's not getting fixed, because that was never the divine's job. The divine's job in your life is to help you be the best version of yourself, to achieve the most spiritually evolved version of yourself. If you have a life's purpose that involves helping others, it's to help you connect you to that as well. But that the divine does not exist as a genie or as a magician. The divine exists in connecting you to your own power. And your own power might lead you to manifest success or relationships or wealth or change within this world. I'm very much an agent of change. And it can make me a little bit chaotic in other people's lives. So I really withdrew for a while, because I was dealing with a lot of new information about what had defined my entire life. And I'm not in the least bitter about it. When I was growing up, they would have had no way of knowing, oh, she has this and she has that, and that's what's causing these struggles. No one would have known that, because it was a developing field, and it's still a developing field. It's still a developing field. Neuroscience is more advanced than it used to be, but it is still something we don't fully understand. And it is important to balance science with what is provable, with what we believe, as a way of living a balanced life. As a neurodivergent person, and almost everybody is, because that fractured focus thing makes people very ungrounded. The thing where people can't be away from their phones, they can't even have one conversation. It's disturbing to me to be out on walks and I'll see people they can't be alone at all. If you can't be alone with your thoughts, they've broken your power. And neurodivergent people have to take extra steps to connect, but everybody can do it through the neurodivergent method and leave behind a world that is trying to take away your focus by scattering your thoughts. And in neurodivergence and spirituality, that's what you're really doing, is you're kind of observing the idea of my brain works differently, but it is my brain. One of the most empowering things I ever heard, and it was not my quote, but I've been sharing it, and I don't have a source for it. It's just, I was reading through a discussion on something, somebody said this, and I said, that's perfect, I'm going to adopt it, I'm going to start teaching it to people, and that is, you need to view your body as something that you are in a partnership with. Because what I'm always telling people is, the C.S. Lewis quote is, you do not have a soul, you are a soul that has a body. And so that body is the thing that is your partner in this divine journey. And that divine part of you can be connected to universal information, universal source, universal magic, universal power, and universal love. So it's very worth it to take the extra steps of, you're not going to be able to do that. I just watch my thoughts go by, but I don't attach to them. That would be beautiful to do. How do you do that? I can't do it. Anybody else with a neurodivergent can't either. But what I can do is notice when I have an anxious, an angry, disrupted feeling and say, don't invest in my thoughts right now. That is just a feeling. It will pass. You will have energetic and emotional cycles that pass through you after stress triggers if you're neurodivergent. So if you had to do something stressful this morning, and unfortunately, going to the grocery store can be really stressful for somebody who's truly neurodivergent and masking it. The other thing is that women are undiagnosed with neurodivergence at a much higher level because of social masking ideals for women. Most societies asked us to conduct ourselves in a way. It's not, that part's not sinister. It's very, very normal to have a public persona versus a private one. And it's part of the reason that people don't catch that it's like, I'm never actually comfortable around other people. If you're doing something that causes you discomfort, it will cause, because your brain balances differently, a cycle of emotions to go through. And you'll have to learn how to, I'm feeling anxious right now. What do I do when I'm anxious? I do self-comforting things. Maybe I dance. Maybe I listen to an attachment remover. That's part of what I helped people program their brains to do, was it starts out with when you're racing thoughts, you can't stop them. Maybe you've got OCD and you can't stop thinking of something. You put on something called an attachment remover. And the first ones you want to use are a little bit negative sounding because they'll disrupt your brain patterns, the thought that won't stop, the looping thought. You want to stop your looping thoughts with going, oh God, that's irritating, but it'll stop the looping thought. Once you've kind of mastered that part, then you move on to putting on more pleasant sounding ones so that it becomes a more pleasant experience when you recognize I am attaching to a thought that will lead to an OCD looping in my head, which takes away all joy in life. And it doesn't do anything. Worry is a wasted emotion. Anxiety is a wasted emotion. If you're open, if you're connected, your intuition gives you the information you need when you need it. And you can also go to people like me who help you figure out what you need to heal. But then you have that tool in your hands. You learn what toolkit you need through spirituality. And it will differ from person to person. But the first thing you have to recognize is that just because it's hard and different for you doesn't mean it's not for you. It means you need a different approach. When you cross the threshold, I did a podcast on liminal space. When you cross the threshold and in that little liminal space between your connection to your spirituality and going through basically a hallway in your spiritual world to connect to something, are all these things that can influence you in the spiritual world. And it's as real as anything else. Part of the reason I use cards is that I have a very literal mind. That is another thing that people with neurodivergence really struggle with, is they have a tendency to be, and like, it's not painfully literal, it's just literal things like if somebody says something, they mean something, which is not always true. And learning how to detach from that. Learning how to be like, I don't expect that from other people because I recognize that my brain does this thing where I take what people say pretty literally, and I have to detach from that. And you have to learn how to take really good care of yourself, and that's the partnership that we're talking about. The idea that you're supposed to treat your body, including the brain that might be a little bit different, as the greatest romantic partner you've ever had is what we're really talking about. You need to embrace that part of yourself as like, I love you. You struggle with this, but you try so hard. You're awesome. Even though there's extra hurdles for you, like, you keep approaching that hurdle till you figure out, can I crawl under it? Can I go around it? Can I go over it? How should I dig underneath it? You will find a method and a means. But it will not work for you to just decide to watch your thoughts and let them, I detach from them, but they just drift by. No, you have to watch your emotion. Your emotion going, it's just a feeling and it will pass. Any thoughts that result in it, I'm not gonna chase that rabbit down that hole. That's what I tell people, is don't chase that bad bunny down that bad hole. Don't go into that wonderland. Just, stop the thought, recognizing that. And the way I did it was, I am very intuitive, and I've always had really, really good timing. And that I would get like fixated on fears, and recognized at one point, I was like, you're literally never right when it's fear-based. Literally, I'm never right when it's fear-based. I'm right a lot, but only when it kind of comes to me and I'm like, anxiety, anger, fear, it's just a form of something attaching to my emotional energy. And that's what you have to understand your cycles when you're neurodivergent. You take a different approach to meditation. You take a different approach to connection. A lot of it's very, very literal. So grounding, eat, shower, walk outside. And then you learn the methods to be more spiritually connected in the here and the now. It looks a little weird in here today because what you can see is I've put like lamps, and it was a very, very dark day. One of the things that you want to do is make sure that you keep yourself very exposed to light, because you will have a tendency towards depression because it's more challenged to have a neurodivergent brain. When you learn how to keep yourself grounded, one of the things that you can do is program in a response. you use that OCD, the looping thing that you can't stop. You say, I'm taking control of that and I'm going to program in response to that. Whenever I have trouble being ungrounded because of the work that I do, what I do is I usually dance around because it helps my brain chemistry. And then I will look around, and I call it the details meditation, which is grounding. You look around and you take stock of the details. Don't draw cards. It's bad for you when you're upset. Drawing cards is not a grounding activity. You do the details thing, and then what I did and what I teach other clients to do is look at your hands. Look at your hands when you feel fully grounded. Examine them. Hey, my cuticles. Oh, did I break a nail? Whatever it might be. You're going to look at your hands once you feel fully grounded, and eventually, and you have to have patience with the process because you are facing, your brain can do amazing things. It can retain all kinds of information. It can achieve so many things. It's not having a broken brain, it's having a different brain. But you can program in the response where if you do it long enough, and it usually takes about a year to establish all the patterns, you can look at your hands when you're not feeling grounded after doing something stressful, and it's grounding for you. And that's and your things are going to be for you. But that's a suggestion of where to start, is that when you recognize that you're uncomfortable, you say, I need to stop and take care of myself. I need to take care of this because neurodivergence can cause reactivity. Trauma can cause reactivity. And it's damaging to you and it's damaging to the relationships around you. So you want to learn how to work with your reactivity. And your reactivity comes from following through on negative emotions instead of hanging out with them till they're gone. Taking care of them. Like if you're really anxious, then you learn to, I'm going to go look at a tree and examine the leaves and then look at my hands and do whatever else I need to. I'm going to take my bracelets off because it keeps snagging on my sweater and it's going to drive me nuts. So I put it inside. In case you're not seeing the video, I just had to take off a piece of jewelry that was trying to eat my clothing, which is a little bit distracting. You have to find a way to focus on the idea that you're connecting. And first you have to heal all your trauma. If you're still angry, if you're still holding on to resentment, what I'm telling people is don't put pressure on yourself to forgive because you do struggle with letting things go. Heal all your stuff. Heal all the reactionary, sensitive parts of you by putting together the programmed methods and means that connect you to your higher self. And I work with a lot of sound healings on YouTube. I think YouTube is a wonderful gift to this world because it allows people who are healers to put some information out there and some access to healing energy, which does it really work? Yes, it does. The idea that neurodivergence involves a different brain pattern, different neuroscience, means that it may be accessing a different way to process our reality that exists in something outside of the 3D, but that able to get away from the distressing parts of that, which are all about heightened emotions. If you have trouble processing 3D emotions from other people sometimes, if you get overwhelmed by them easily, if you take too much responsibility for them, what happens in the spiritual realm is that everything's heightened because it's not grounded in anything 3D. So you work on your 3D stuff first, of learning to recognize what other people do is about them and not you. That if you're not trying to hurt anybody and you're trying to do your best, that it's, you don't bear a lot of responsibility unless you've, really hurt somebody, that you are doing your best. Learning to love and accept yourself as somebody who's like, I'm working with what I've got to the best of my ability and I'm doing my best in this world. And that is all that's ever asked of anybody. And that's your connection point before you even get to spirituality of, how do I go through the grounding? How do I stop the runaway train of my thoughts? How do I recognize when there's a hyperfixation that might involve emotions, which is one of the things that goes along with limerence. And limerence is where you have very intense feelings for somebody, but it's not grounded in your actual relationship with them. Sometimes it's not really grounded in how they even act or who they really are. It's a brain chemical that has been, you've attached it to that person, but it doesn't really resemble their 3D personality. It may be that you're reacting to their spiritual self, or it may be that your brain has that tendency to overproduce a chemical. When you're attracted, it produces too much of it. And then it leads to limerence. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. Your brain has tremendous gifts. Your brain has tremendous gifts. The reality that you live in is unique. You are literally a unicorn. Every single last one of us, we are actually snowflakes, because the world as you see it, as you experience it, your personal view of it, the way you process it and the way you think about it, Only one version of that exists, even if you live in a community of, even if you're like, nobody here is Amish because you wouldn't be listening to me, but even if you live in a very structured community, the way you process things goes through your individual brain. And neuroscience predicts our patterns, but it does not control it. And that is what makes the difference, is that there's a different version of you that exists in the minds of absolutely everybody who's ever interacted with you. And that you have to detach from that as being important and just do your best from moment to moment. When I had to withdraw from people so much to like process all the stuff I've been learning and learn my own methods, to different people, I'm sure it felt like I was being incredibly cold. It's like I absolutely had to take care of me so that I could go back to being, I'm kind of a naturally happy person. And I needed to get back to that to be able to do this work and do good in other people's lives as well as my own. And I also deserve to feel happy. But the end result was that I think a lot of people felt like a little bit abandoned by me. And I'm bringing that up for a good reason. I recognized that because of the things that go on with the trauma and the neurodivergence and a couple of other things, that it's like until I feel ready to emotionally support another person at the level everybody deserves to be supported in a relationship, I'm going to keep to myself. I'm going to learn my own stuff first and, put your oxygen mask on you first. And that's what spirituality does. That's what spirituality does. A spiritual connection is the way of putting on your oxygen-rich environment in any form of crisis that will keep you level-headed and keep you cool. But you have to approach it differently. And if you hear absolutely nothing else from this, it is that spirituality does not function in the same manner for you. You have to be very patient with it. It will not come naturally because you have to go through 3D behaviors to be able to get your mind to rest enough. Getting your mind to be still is hard when you have neurodivergence, particularly ADHD, particularly the induced ADHD. We have induced ADHD in our society. And I've done so many things on, how do you get away from that? For instance, like I do live alone, but like I used to when I was eating or down in the kitchen cooking or something, I'd have my iPad down there and I'd have a TV show on or something. And as I did more and more research into the idea that, people are losing cognitive decline, by the way, is part of the reason we're seeing so much of it is, again, that fractured focus thing. Technology is a miracle, but it's also very destructive to brains that run on electricity. Your brain has electrical impulses in it. You're constantly interacting with something electric. It's disruptive to your ability to achieve, to focus, to have happiness, to have peace, to feel safe in a world that's constantly bombarding you with what bad thing is happening now. So many good things are happening right this second too. So many good things they're just not getting any press. I live in like a really cute little apartment complex that everything's set up as a townhome. It's a small community thing. Everybody here is really nice to one another. It's nice and quiet and respectful. And that is, and everybody here is very different. It's because there is more peace in this world than we're being led to believe. We're focusing on the absolute worst that people can achieve in the media, and it's making people hopeless. And if you're neurodivergent and you have a tendency towards compulsive thinking, it's really destructive for you. So that's why the unplug thing is the thing that I say over and over again. You have times when you are just away from your phone throughout the course of the day. When I go downstairs to cook or to eat, I don't have any devices with me. Sometimes I'll have a healing recording in on headphones or something and the device is upstairs, but for the most part, no. You have to take control of, if you're neurodivergent and you want to begin connecting, the very first thing you do is recognize, I need to be able to control my own focus even at a base level. You start with the base level controlling of your focus, which can be knowing how to keep your OCD train off of the tracks. And that starts with, I felt this. Oh, feelings pass. Feelings pass, feelings pass. That is my new code for I am feeling a negative emotion, is I don't do anything. Pause, hit that pause button, hit the pause button, sit your button down. That's what I tell myself. If I have a negative emotion, because I know that stressful anything, and like every interaction with people is a little bit stressful for me. It's not that I don't love all people, I do. It's simply that I'm different. I'm different, and I'm lucky enough that it's always been received as a mostly positive thing. I'm different in a way that is a little bit more, I didn't get paved my way a little bit more easily because I tend to be funny and a little bit outgoing, even though I'm insanely introverted. I'm insanely introverted. I'm so introverted. And I know it can't possibly seem like that when I do this and I, regularly put my face in front of, God knows how many people could potentially see it, like all of them. But I do that because we have to talk about these things if we want things to get better. 20% of the population is neurodivergent. You need to take a literal approach to connection. You want to be able to connect because the way that you relate to faith has been taught to you by corrupted power structures known as religion. Anything that's trying to tell you your belief systems is up to something unless they're saying mostly it's in your hands. People are turned away from the concept of faith currently because they can see the obvious hypocrisy of religion. They can see the obvious misogyny in so many of the things that are taught in organized religion. Religion and faith are not synonymous. They're not. Religion is the thing that was built around the real thing that is faith, trying to control you via it. If you take back your power and say, no, my faith is mine, and I know that the teachings that tend to be seen through the religious, everybody's central figure was teaching good things. Be kind, be generous, don't be greedy, hey, don't kill each other. Particularly not in my name, Crusades. The current form of the Christian church is based in hypocrisy, and it's really easy to spot if you know history at all. If you get defensive around somebody challenging faith or a belief, then that's denial. Because these things are documented throughout history. I'm not saying anything that isn't provable through documented, correspondence and battles and deaths, and we killed that religious sect that there was a form of Christianity that believed in reincarnation. They were slaughtered in the Crusades. Does that make the people killing right? No. It means they're trying to use something. So divorce religion and faith for a moment in your head. And if you're a religious person, I'm not attacking your connection to religion. What I'm telling you is that it has a reason to tell you some of the more controlling things, and that don't let anything take your power to that extent. You're taking back your power when you connect spiritually. Neurodivergent people have very powerful brains, but it's like our engines can misfire. Like your ability to focus it's like a piston that can misfire, and you have to have a good method to retune your brain and reprogram it. And you start with the very literal, I ground by walking outside, touching the earth, taking stock of the what's in front of my face right now as a way of grounding. And then at the end of that, you follow up with something that goes everywhere with you, like looking at your hands or your watch, or, plucking your skin to see if you're dehydrated, whatever it might be. I think I might be dehydrated, actually, having done that. There is a path towards connection for you. It will be potent. It will be transformative. It will dull the noise and bring you peace if you are willing to take it. But it will be different than the, all beings of love and light. And I know I get a mocking tone when I do, and I tried to correct it there. Why? I'm going to be so honest right now, a little bit of jealousy. I wish it was that easy for me. I wish it was that easy for me. If you're in the neurodivergent category, which more and more people will be because of induced ADHD, it's hard not to envy the idea of somebody being able to just choose to let the thought go by and not invest in it. Instead, you have to say, I recognize the emotion and I will not invest in the emotion. Because if I invest in the emotion, the thoughts will come. Your approach is not towards your thoughts, it's towards your emotions, of understanding that you have pitched and peaked emotions and that you need to let it cycle through before you act, before you do. If you really want to be free of the things that come along with neurodivergence, which includes anxiety disorders and a couple of other things that are related to having things like autism spectrum disorder that goes wildly undiagnosed in people before the last two generations. It literally did not exist as a diagnosis for anything other than the most extreme cases when I was growing up. It's part of the reason that my father didn't stand a chance. All of the research that I've done into this, and I read peer-reviewed research. I'm out there reading stuff on Harvard. I'm not going through gurus for this. I respect science. I think it's funny that scientists have lost the idea that it can coexist with faith. It's like, just because you can't define something and can't prove it doesn't mean it's not real for someone's experience. because faith is truly an emotional feeling of connection to something that carries you through. It's not a genie that fixes everything, but it's the thing that gives you access to your power so that you can fix what you can in your life and you can feel peaceful having known that you've done your best. It's really, really worth it. Now, how does that apply to the law of attraction? The law of attraction is thoughts create your reality. That is essentially the law of attraction, is that you can master your thoughts to create the reality that you want, to draw in the energy that you want. Is that true? In my experience, yes. Now, the reason that I balk at that is like, I'm going to contradict myself and seem like a hypocrite for a moment, is that I'm so aware of all the suffering in the world. And I know full well that, people born one of the specials I was watching a documentary about a charitable organization that helps the children of sex workers in, it's one of the Asian countries, East Asian countries. I think it's India, but I'm not positive. It might be Bangladesh. That they safeguard their children. They have basically daycare for the children of sex workers because those children were being left alone at night while their mothers had to go and ply their trade. They don't have any other options available to them. We need to release judgment over what people do to survive. Most people aren't trying to hurt a soul. This charity worked with that. Trying to make sure the children were safe, not judging what the mothers were doing, just, making sure the children were safe so that the next generation might stand a better chance. And that's where I balk at the thoughts create your reality, because those children are not creating their reality. Their mothers are not creating their reality. Different people come here to serve a different purpose, and maybe they have a lifetime that is just a thoroughly grounded reality where all you're doing is experiencing the 3D, because that's possible as well. But the law of attraction and thoughts create your reality, and how it works with neurodivergence, and how you have to marshal your thoughts and recognize when I'm having an emotion, what do? I say I'm having an emotion and I know not to invest in it. It will pass. That's only with the ones that we deem negative, and they're negative sometimes because they can be destructive. Anger, jealousy, fear, sorrow helps you emotionally process, but at least you can mute it ever so slightly. Is that, like, we can get stuck in a loop. Horrible thing about depressive energy is it's a tiny bit addictive, not in that you want it, it's just that your brain compulsively goes back to it. And so there is a thing of like, no, I will frequently, because there's a lot of sad stuff in my life. I've talked about a very traumatic background, fully recognizing that if things exist on a 1 to 10 scale, even though I got it all, that my ACE score should be 12 because there's like 3 things that they didn't put in there that happened to me. And one thing that didn't, I didn't have people go to jail as far as I know. That it still exists on a really mild level, and I'm incredibly lucky. I'm incredibly lucky to have lived in a time where I have an access point to doing all the research I need, because it turns out that I can't be taught in a formal setting. I have to teach myself almost everything. Now, I did well enough in school in a lot of different areas because I would go home and reconstruct things and learn them in my own way. Because I come from a long line of teachers, that the whole neurodivergent thing is like, it doesn't come with any intellectual disabilities. In fact, if anything, I am considered intellectually gifted and was since I was a child. And that actually was kind of an impediment to a lot of things, because what's wrong with her? But she's so smart. And it's like, well, like, what's wrong with, I have a neurodivergent brain. And the reason that I genuinely don't like to participate in labels, but I'm sure everybody can figure out what I'm talking about, is that it just went undiagnosed and it defined my whole life, and I just got lucky. I just got lucky over and over again that I came in a package and a form, and that my oddness, took the form of being funny for people. So it was more of an attractive thing than something that made me stand out in a bad way. It's not about guilt or shame. It's about that I'm tired of people trying to be reductive with these labels. We have a tendency to, once we learn that person has depression, that person has this, that person has the other thing, that person has that thing, we put them in a box and don't take them in a global application any longer. And literally everything that I say about spirituality can be applied to other people, because not all neurotypical people can connect either. It can work for anybody. It's just literal brains needs things broken down in literal steps. And that's Because at first when I was becoming a spirituality teacher, I was like, this is a little bit odd because I am not like this. I have edges. I can be an edgy person. One of the things that I receive as feedback is that, like, my people really like my readings, but one of the things that I hear over and over again is she's very direct. And it's like, God, I'm trying so hard to be diplomatic too. I really genuinely am. I'm, over here trying my best, but like to other people, I'm still super direct. That it was odd to me that I was being asked to help people find spirituality because I think of it as being more loving and floaty and, wee than I am. I'm bring down the wrath of God. Where's that lightning thing? I can do an exorcism. I'm that person. I'm really a lot more of a light warrior than I am a light worker. But recently I've been going more towards, I can balance between the two. And it is partially because one of the saddest things about not having spirituality teachers who deal with 20%, that's a giant percentage of like a room full of people, 100 people, 20 of them being left out when it comes to connection to divine spirituality, which can give you so much peace in this world. And it doesn't make your life perfect. It makes you view your struggles as lessons. And the weird thing is, as soon as you start embracing your struggles as lessons, they get easier because you're learning how to deal with them. A lot of the obstacles in your path towards the law of attraction and manifestation are that you get caught in the bigger energies that create blockages like anger, fear, anxiety, resentment, the inability to let go of the past. Your past is your best teacher. It will teach you whatever reactive things that you're working with, and don't judge yourself. Don't judge yourself for it. If you did not understand your brain, how could you do better? But now there are ways to understand your brain better. It's going to differ from person to person, but honest to goodness, and this is not just to get people to watch the podcast, I don't actually get anything out of you watching the podcast. I did that to try and help as much as I could. There's something on everything, including how to start meditating. But the easiest way, because it will give you peace, that's the first step on the spirituality staircase, is learning how to still your mind. And the first thing you do is that you recognize, I'm having a negative emotion. My own history teaches me that it usually doesn't result, because I have catastrophic thinking sometimes because I have an anxiety disorder. I have to recognize that. When I'm feeling anxious, it's like, remember, you have an anxiety disorder. What are you supposed to do? I'm supposed to take care of this anxiety till I feel better, whether it's eating something, breathing deep. I've learned to observe the emotion and clear the room that is my head and go, I'm focusing on, I'm watching this anxiety. How long does it take to pass? And when you start doing that, what happens is it takes less and less time to pass. And when you're angry, you identify what you're angry about. And I'm going to cop to something, and all of my ego is like, I don't want to cop to this, but I'm going to do it. I have in the past, anger is a protective construct around what you're really trying to protect. It's protective. Anger is protective. I used to experience anger towards other people, not just like angry, I hope everything bad happens to you, but like I would feel that kind of like irritation when somebody did something I didn't know how to handle, because it made me bump into my own perceived inadequacies. And that would cause, because, guilt and shame feels so awful, anger would rise up in me. As soon as I started recognizing that, the second I felt like I feel inadequate here and I feel this protective anger rising up, it solved a problem that had been going on my whole life, which, I just had to learn how to say, you know what that is? That is your ego trying to protect something that's vulnerable and can be made sad too easily. Let it go. Somebody doing something I don't know how to handle is not the same thing as them doing something to me, and it is not the same thing as them doing anything wrong. It means that I have some areas that are a little bit more difficult for me, and I have to be very kind and careful with them. And one of the things that I had to recognize is I don't crave emotional closeness at the level other people do. And I used to judge myself for it terribly until, more study of neurodivergence proved to me that it's just your brain. It's just my brain. It doesn't mean I don't feel love. I feel tremendous love. I'm actually a really good person to talk to about your feelings. I don't like to talk about mine. with other people because I didn't know how to take care of them. Now that I do, it's not a process that anybody else should participate in because that forms codependency. And so I had to learn how to be a really self-contained unit. And I do get close to people and I do like know how to help people with their emotions, but I had to recognize at first that it's like it's a process for me to first deal with I have bigger emotions than other people and I need to take super good care of them and I need not to overextend myself. And other people, if they didn't understand that it's like she's literally dealing with a neurodivergent brain, she doesn't have to give. If they felt hurt and slighted, I didn't mean it that way and I didn't even have the information to extend to somebody to be like, technically, this is what's wrong with my brain. And it's not wrong, it's just what I'm coping with and dealing with. So it makes this part really hard for me. And specifically, it's helping people with grief. Because I have repressed all of my own grief, all of it. And having people drop dead and be run over by cars and like houses catch fire, and there was a lot that caused grief, but I never felt any of it because I knew it would be so overwhelming, it would be insanely uncomfortable. That's part of what I felt in this healing journey, this spirituality, and now it's done. Does it come back sometimes? Sure, sure. The fact is that grief is just part of life. Everybody's dealing with some kind of loss. And until I did that work, oh my gosh, I didn't know how to help people with grief. I didn't know how to help people with grief because I never wear my heart on my sleeve like that. And I was just freaked out by it. And, it left people I genuinely cared about without the support that they needed sometimes. But then I had to forgive myself for being like, it's not that you didn't want to do it, it's that you literally didn't know how. And I've taught myself more, but teaching myself more has been, achieving greater peace with my limitations. That it's like, it's okay. You're great at a lot of other things. I am the best friend in the world during a crisis. I am fantastic at solving problems. I can help you work through your own confusing stuff because I'm great at putting things into order that makes sense for other people. But I'm more active and I'm not good at I just passively receive. I've been working on it, but it will always be a challenge for me because my brain turns on and my processor goes so fast in my head. And that was and it's the same thing for anybody else with ADHD. It's the same thing for anybody else with who has that fractured focus, the inability. Impulsivity and reactivity are two things that result from trauma. They are also results of neurodivergence. It's part of the reason I'm resisting like label, 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 label. It's like we're starting to talk about greater than 20% of the population because our world is traumatizing. Our world is traumatizing because it is so uncertain right now. And our influences are trying to make us more freaked out because frightened people are easier to control. And that is why you need to withdraw into self until you learn how to be like, I recognize that fear, I recognize that anxiety, I'm coping with the emotion, and when I'm calm is when I do something to address anything that needs to be taken care of. And when you learn the tools to keep yourself calm, which include grounding, which include meditation, which include alignment, which include setting aside time each day to just be alone with your thoughts and invite in connection through sometimes invocation. It is weird that I'm such a literal person and still believe in magic. It's because I would do magic and it worked. Like the magic I do works, and sometimes it can be like, oh, like I didn't mean it to tone it down, didn't mean it quite that strongly, but okay, thank you for that. Specifically, I'm talking about that banishment spell that I did where I was just like, oh Lord, that was a lot more extreme than I thought it was going to be. Our karmic work involves it's not punishment, it's lessons. Our karmic work, the first part of it is recognizing who we are and what we would wish to reach for our divine self with more. And that's the way you want to look at it because your divine self is patient. And patience is one of the forms of courage. It's patient, it's courageous, it's kind, it's accepting. It's peaceful. It's powerful. These are all the reasons that you want to connect with it. But that your path, it's like you have to blast through the mountain of the obstacle that is neurodivergence, but understanding that knowledge gives you that TNT. What a tortured metaphor. And yet we're going to keep going with it. You have obstacles to connection that you can get through if you take a very literal method towards it. Give yourself permission to not be part of the spirituality herd. If your brain has been altered through trauma, through genetics, which is neurodivergence, or there may be other factors at play because it can be induced through trauma. It is not induced through Tylenol. I'm sorry for the giant eye roll, but the rejection of science is as troubling to me as almost anything. Neurodivergent people have always existed. They just didn't have the diagnosis for it. And how do I know that? I study history, and man, some of the people throughout history, it's like neurodivergent, that person had autism, that person, it's so obvious. Hypersexuality, you can see so many different ways. Oh, and it also comes out in substance abuse problems, which is one of the masking things that people do. So sometimes people fall into addiction because they're trying to cope with a brain that the world is telling them that's your fault and that's your fault, that's your fault, instead of having a different brain. There's a method for you. I have outlined so much of it already, but I wanted to talk about it because I don't think I've actually talked very specifically about, no, it's going to be different for you. And that's the first thing you need to accept. And you don't need to have, you don't need to have a diagnosis in hand to understand, I do have trouble focusing. How can you tell if this is for you? Are you okay at being able to sit down and clear your mind at all? Because that's where connection starts. And if you say, I can't do that, I can't do that, you don't know how to yet, and that's different. Not knowing how to yet is different from I can't. And your divine connection to the part of you that isn't involved with your brain structure, that is part of your divine soul. You do not have a soul. You are a soul that has a body, and that body may have a brain with a different construction, and that our brains can be altered by input, particularly electrical or impulse input, which is what is coming through our phones and through all of the technology that we interact with. And I love technology. It's amazing. I love the fact that if I feel like reading about anything, studying it, that's what I do when I'm stressed. I'll study, because nothing takes my anxiety out like learning something new, because it gives my overactive brain something to chew on that is not just looping. That was the thing that I discovered, is that I have to be a lifelong learner because it's the best thing for my brain construction. Except that you need to take a different approach, and that you may not have a diagnosis. And again, I'm positive everyone's going, like, but that means that it's like, yeah, it does. I'm not going to start labeling myself. I'm not going to start labeling myself because the label is not important. The label is not important. The idea that more and more people come under this in a chaotic world. Focus is where power starts and where your connection starts. Focus is. Everything in this world tries to keep you focusing on 8 million things at once. The first place to start is, I'm going to do one thing at a time. I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going to eat dinner. I'm not going to need to check my phone 15 times when I'm working out. I did that. Sometimes I'll do workouts where I don't even turn on the TV. I have a set of power block weights, so I work out at home. And their best purchase I ever made, they've saved me thousands in gym memberships and got me really in shape throughout the course of the last, I think I've had them for over 10 years. I highly, highly recommend them. I'm not affiliated on any level. It's just that that's what allows my introverted butt to also be a weightlifter without having to set foot in a gym. But sometimes I won't put anything on. I'll just do like an open-eyed meditation while I'm working out. And I do more of those things. Take walks without your phone. Eat your food without your phone. Get away from screens at least a half hour a day. I know I've said this before. You will feel very uncomfortable at first, and that is one of the biggest signs that you need to do it. You can tell something's a crutch when you feel freaked out when you don't have it. The reality is that, and this is a question to ask yourself, how many times has there really been such a screaming emergency that you needed your phone with you on a walk? Why do you want to take a walk and have a conversation with another person rather than enjoying the world at all? Try to ground in this world and enjoy this world a little bit. Try to enjoy your own company, because it's making you insanely lonely because you don't even have your own company. Finding your focus and your connection to spirituality is allowing you to enjoy being you. If you have a neurodivergent brain, it may have been difficult for you because your sensitivities are different. There are methods, there are means. The greatest thing about this is that there's a lot of information out there. And I'm going to direct you towards something, but I need you to release the need to go, oh, I don't like that label. because it's a form of addiction recovery, but it works for other people and it will work for people with neurodivergence. And it's called SMART recovery because it's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy for overcoming addiction. If you have compulsivity, it will work for you. Reactivity, it will work for you because you're breaking your loops, you're breaking your cycles. The first step with connecting spirituality is identifying where is my cycling beginning and how do I break it. And for me, it was I am feeling a negative emotion. If I allow my thoughts to start developing that, it will grow and get bigger. And so instead I say, nope, whack-a-mole. I will sit here until that is done, and it is not repressing real feelings because I'm incredibly responsible. I get, stuff gets paid on time, all the 9 yards. I know I will get it done, but that I can do things in a peaceful state. But that if I do them when I'm in a state of, and I don't like the word using the word because people have a connotation with it, but it's an overwhelmed or an aroused state, that I will feel worse. That if I am willing to say, okay, negative emotions, stop, breathe, take care of myself, what are my hands doing? Should I eat something? Should I walk outside? Look, a bird. Anything that gets me away from, I'm going to invest thought in that emotion. And it's the exact opposite of how they tell you to connect spirituality when you're neurotypical. Neurotypical people are told, you learn to just watch your thoughts go by and you're detached from them. You can't do that, neurodivergent people. You have to say, I'm feeling something. And if I start thinking about it, then it will make that feeling worse. It's like watering a weed in my own head. And so I'm not going to water that. I'm going to cut off the water supply that is my thoughts and say, I'm clearing the decks. And if you need to repeat a thought over and over in your head, I literally get really assertive with it. Nope, not thinking about that. That's not good. And if you need to speak out loud, fine. It's a real psychological technique, and it's called journaling aloud, and it's another form of focus. And you need to hear your own voice sometimes telling you everything's okay. And so sometimes when you're anxious, you want to say, no, I'm not going to develop any thoughts from here. I'm going to just stop and take care of myself. I know what this is, and I know that it will pass. I'm a very observant person, and what I have observed over the course of my life is that if I don't invest in those negative or destructive emotions, if I just sit with them, they go by quickly. But if I try to do I watch my thoughts go by, it's like, no, I can't do that. Because you likely have a form of hyperfixation or OCD looping. And so you start with I feel this, and it's not emotional repression. You're letting yourself feel it, but you're not threatened by the feeling any longer because you're not investing thought in it. So I hope this has been helpful because it's a little bit of a, scattered topic. And mostly it's that because of the proliferation of tech being handheld and your focus always being on the 3D, but also on the not 3D, on the and so much of what's made up online is, AI is starting to become a problem. All you have to do is hang out on Reddit to see that. There are hallmarks of, oh, look, it's an am I the jerk or am I the asshole thing where somebody says, now half of my friends are saying this, and now you spot the hallmarks. AI is playing a big role in keeping people afraid. And it's another reason that as the rise of AI, and Jacob and I did a podcast on it, and it's like, I don't think it's going to replace a bunch yet, but what it is doing is that people who are not very good at thinking about one thing at once don't question things. And so even though it's really easy to spot the pattern, people invest in it because they're doing more than one thing at once. Multitasking is not your friend always because it robs you of your power, it robs you of your focus, it robs you of your ability to manifest. Law of attraction requires your focus. The law of attraction does work. The thing where I was just talking about with children of sex workers and everything, it's like, but doesn't that disprove it? No, it means that we do get to come here and have different experiences for different lifetimes. And the very fact that you're drawn towards something and reaching for it means that it's a door that's trying to open for you. If the door is trying to open for you, figure out how you get through that door. And your method might be very, very different, and in fact will be if you have a neurodivergent brain. Stop trying to do neurotypical things if you are neurodivergent. P.S. Almost everybody is having induced neurodivergence through induced hyperactivity and ADHD. because we are told to never drop your guard, never, like that thing, what really started at CNN, 24-hour news. We were really screwed the moment we decided news was entertainment, because it told them yet another way to yank us around. Cut off extra influences, find your inner peace, learn how to detach from your emotions, because your emotions because emotional thinking leads to personal destruction. Particularly emotional actions lead to personal destructions. Learning to have a method of my emotions, I don't fear them, but I take care of them, knowing that every decision I make from a calm, cool, centered space is more likely to yield the results that I want. But if I act on my negative or intense emotions, then you're going to get things that are not very stable. And it's why people know they can manifest, but they're like, it doesn't work out the way it does. Yeah, because, the tower, anything built on a faulty foundation must fall. And the idea that like something is influenced by a negative energy is part of what makes that, foundation faulty. This has been Logical Magic, examining esoterica, spirituality for people with neurodivergence, and why more and more people have neurodivergence. There's a different method. I do teach it, but here's the thing. You can take that one little seed of, I need to take a more literal approach, and you can develop your own method if you have a brain where, like, you're like me, you were self-taught. I'm self-taught on literally everything. That's where I become grateful for my genetic predisposition towards teachers. There's a long line of teachers on my dad's side. And so I just came with a genetic predisposition towards being able to teach myself. You may also. So just take that seed of understand your approach is different. And it starts with, I learned to detach from the emotion by saying, I'm not going to have thoughts around this emotion. It will come to me when I'm calm if it's important. I believe that I really do have my answers within me, but that my emotions lie to me about what those answers are sometimes. So I wait for them to calm down, and then I take calm action, and I get good results that are stable, and that they increase and they continue to multiply, so that you can have the life that you hope for. And when you have the life that you're hoped for, what are you asked of spirituality? To be kind and compassionate and decent and not judging others as well. A lot of the messages of major religions, again, they took it, they corrupted it to control people. Don't have sex, beat your wife. It's okay, God's fine with that. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. The God of the Bible, the sky bully dad, I did grow up in the Episcopal Church, and I'm very grateful for that. With no parental influences, I'm just incredibly neglected. I was grateful to grow up in a very liberal faction of the Episcopal Church. I was grateful to go to apparently the one and only Quaker farm camp that existed, because it taught me a lot about who I wanted to be in this world. I'm grateful for those influences, but I look at the greater power structure, and it's very, very, very obvious that it's corrupt and out to increase power and wealth, which would never really be part of a true spiritual connection. First, you resolve the lesser aspects of yourself, and then you know what you really need. Then you know what you really need to be happy and to be peaceful. It's a long journey sometimes, but it's worth taking. Take care. Be well. If you want to find me at therisingmoon.com or tarot at the Rising Moon on YouTube. I hope this has been helpful for you. Just know that there's a method that works for you. If you want to come talk to me about it, I'd be happy to talk to you about what's the best method for you. Okay? Take care. Be well.